Thank you for joining us and welcome to another edition of the GNBS in 30. Sit back and be enthused as we tell you all about the GNBS products and services. In this edition, you will learn about our outreach programs, when and where we will be in your region. You will also learn about an important national standard, the standard for used motor vehicles, and all about some important activities the GNBS took part in the month of February. I am Baby Katoon, Communications Officer in the Corporate Communications Department of the GNBS. Sit back and enjoy. Recently, the GNBS partnered with the Competition and Consumer Affairs Commission to visit Berbice. Yes, our first outreach for the year was in Region 6. We met with the Rose Hall Town Council, the Corinthine Chamber of Commerce, and also conducted an expo and 2 school lectures. Let's take a look at the highlights.
Of course, whatever information we receive today, we will share that with our members. Our members are vast and they will take that information further into the community. It's always good to have these interactions, these meetings, so that we can share with not only with our members, but also members of the community what these agencies do.
Most of the vehicles used today in Guyana were imported as used motor vehicles, or Guyanese would say some are second-hand vehicles that were bought from someone already using them in Guyana. In 2021, the GNBS approved the national standard for used motor vehicles, and in this segment of the program, we will learn more about this. With me is Mr. Kevin Simon, an economist at the Competition and Consumer Affairs Commission. Mr. Simon,
Yes.
thank you for joining us.
You're welcome.
Can you tell us what prompted the development of the standard?
Okay, so what prompted the development of the standard was based on the Competition and Consumer Affairs analysis of the auto industry. We would have received increase in the number of complaints over the years. Increase in complaints based on defective motor vehicles, based on lack of pertinent information to consumers on the information of used vehicles, and also deceptive conduct in terms of the contracts, contractual agreements for these used motor vehicles between the suppliers and the consumers. Now, to put things into perspective, from 2015 we would have received 360 complaints totaling a whopping in excess of $489 million. So basically what that would mean is that on a yearly basis, we would receive about 51 complaints per year, totaling in excess of $69 million.
Wow, that's quite a lot.
Yes.
I must mention that it was the CCAC that requested the formulation of this standard in 2021. I know that you were one of the persons who worked closely with the development of the standard.
Yes.
Who were some of the other stakeholders involved?
Okay, some of the other stakeholders involved would be the Guyana Revenue Authority, the Georgetown Chamber of Commerce, the Guyana Road Safety Council, the Guyana Auto Dealers Association, as well as you would know you guys get a National Bureau of Standards, and as Ms. Baby just stated, along with us, the Competition and Consumer Affairs Commission.
Okay, and standards are developed using a range of documents. What was the main document?
Correct. Well, one of the main documents involved in this standard was the CART Model Consumer Protection Bill of 2016. Now, this document, as the name states, basically is a document that protects consumers when purchasing goods and services. Now, under this document, there were some requirements that were made. The CARICOM Model Consumer Protection Standards for used motor vehicles, and this was developed in 2016 under Section 142 of the Consumer Protection Bill. Now, based on these requirements, the requirements would cover used motor vehicles. It would cover the consumer protection standards for used motor vehicles. It covers the consumer information notice and the requirements for the consumer information notice.
Who does the standard applies to, and what are some of the information that should be provided to consumers if you're purchasing a motor vehicle?
Yes, okay. The standard applies to used motor vehicles, right? It applies to a supplier who would be selling used motor vehicles to a consumer. It applies to a person who is acting as a supplier on behalf of an agent in the sale of used motor vehicles, and it applies to the consumer information notice. Basically, consumer information notice should be provided to the consumer by the supplier because it has pertinent information on the used motor vehicle itself.
Okay, and what are some of the information that should be provided?
Okay, some information that should be provided on the consumer information notice from the supplier's perspective would be the name, address, contact number for the supplier, cash price, or if you're purchasing hire purchase, the hire purchase price of the vehicle, the year or model of the vehicle, the vehicle information number, the VIN number or the chassis number of the vehicle, the radio capability of the vehicle, and some other pertinent information would also be warranty, fuel type would be also some other types of information.
Okay, and interestingly, I'd like to ask, does this standard applies to vehicles purchased online?
Yes, the standard does apply to used motor vehicles purchased online. What is one thing to note though, given that this is a local standard, it only gives local jurisdiction. So for example, let's say a person would purchase a motor vehicle directly from SBT Japan, like we know a lot of persons do import those vehicles from. The standard would not cover those persons because they're directly purchased from an international dealer. But let's say you purchase a used motor vehicle from a local supplier who purchases through SBT, then that standard would cover on that those grounds.
Thank you for that. And what are some of the information that should be provided to the buyer?
Okay, some of the information that should be provided to the buyer should be, for the supplier, should be the name of the supplier, address, contact number, TIN number, and also the registration of the supplier, and also if there is any other information the supplier would want to provide to the consumer, such as email address.
And these are supposed to be provided in case you have a reason to go back to that person.
Exactly. In case you have issues that will arise with the vehicle, and you have this information that you'll be able to now contact the supplier concerning these issues. I would encourage the suppliers to act in accordance with the Consumer Affairs Act. Provide the consumers with all relevant documents. For example, the agreement for after-sale services. For example, the agreement of sale, the certificate of fitness, the registration plates, and so forth. So that we will have a smooth transition when dealing with these transactions.
All right, thank you very much for joining us, and we'll be sure to invite you again next time.
Thank you very much.
Now, the GNBS shares a good relationship with the Guyana Police Force. In February, the Bureau continued training law enforcement officers, and in this clip, Mr. Lloyd David, Head of Corporate Communications, will tell you more.
The Guyana National Bureau of Standards continues to provide support to the Guyana Police Force in the area of speed guns, breathalyzers, the use of tires, the care and use of tires, and also the International System of Unit, or what you might know as the metric unit. This is important, this training is important because it allows ranks of the Ghana Police Force to become more knowledgeable in these areas, especially in the conduct of their duties and functions. So speed guns are important, they are necessary, and the verification of these equipment is done by the GNBS to ensure accuracy. Likewise, breathalyzers. So the GNBS offers guidance through training to the ranks of the Ghana Police Force to keep them updated and also to give them an opportunity to acquire a certificate indicating that they have participated in this training. So the GNBS has been doing this for the last 3 years or so, and we will continue to provide these training to the ranks of the Ghana Police Force on request by the force so that they can equip themselves to properly conduct their functions during their enforcement activities.
Thank you, Lloyd. The GNBS on January 19th recertified the Ghana Defense Force Medical Laboratory. The laboratory received a plaque and a certificate from the GNBS for maintaining the requirements of the national standard GYS 170. The standard deals with the general operations of a laboratory. The GDF lab was opened in 2008 and was first certified in 2018. Let's hear from the head of the laboratory, Ms. Bonita Richards, who tell us all about the struggles, the challenges, and also encourage others to get certified.
Providing a service entails you have to ensure that your service is of a standard, of a quality. The benefits for us is that I can say that we can attest that what the service that we are providing here is of a standard, as to the national standard, and it's for betterment for the service of our employees here. That's the benefit. The plus side though is that individually I can see that we have achieved, and we continue to achieve more based on what we want to get done. We just have to have the vision, and with everyone on board, I think we have gotten that vision, that we're moving forward together. And as much as I can, as I said, as long as I'm sitting here, I want to ensure that whatever's offered outside, we must top that standard outside it in terms of services. Once you meet a standard, it is telling you that you're doing something good, that you're of your own self, you're providing a service that you know it is of the quality service that is required, that we can meet that. If we can meet that minimum standard of meeting to the national certification, that's a start. It's a go-getter, and it's all, to me, it takes a team to get the work done.
If you operate a clinical or testing laboratory, be sure to reach out to the GNBS and get certified to the GYS 170 national standard. Now let's move to calibration services. The GNBS offers a range of calibration services in the areas of pressure, torque, mass, and many more. In this short video, our Industrial Metrology and Testing Department will tell you more about the calibration of torque, pressure gauges, and digital multimeters. Tell us, what is calibration? What's the importance of calibration?
Well, calibration, actually, it's a set of operations carried out under specific conditions. For example, it's comparing a device submitted by a client for calibration to a standard that is calibrated to international standards.
So this ensures that it is accurate?
Right, so the calibration now would actually determine whether that device is meeting the specifications stated by the manufacturer. So once the calibration is performed, you can then determine whether that instrument is performing to its specifications, whether it's in tolerance or out of tolerance.
What are some of the devices that are generally calibrated?
So at the Bureau, we would calibrate like pressure gauges, torque wrenches, multimeters. And those are the three areas actually we'll be looking at today by giving you a demonstration. There are other areas for mass, volume, temperature, and dimensional calibrations.
Okay.
Pressure gauge is an essential measuring device. This is used to measure pressure to determine, let's say, a quality check in the industry with regards to, let's say, a food manufacturing industry. So it helps to determine the safety in terms of if you're measuring fluid, gas, or liquid. And also it helps to determine whether you're overpressuring or underpressuring your devices, your whole measuring processes. So you'd find the uses of pressure gauges in aeronautics, the food industry, the oil industry. So those are critical industries those devices are used in. And with regards to safety, it's important to have those devices calibrated. So you know the accuracy, and also it helps to with consistency in terms of manufacturing of your products. Once you have those devices calibrated and you are aware that they are reading accurate.
You said that the pressure gauges are used to ensure the pressure is at the required amount. Can you say an example of how the pressure gauge is used?
Right, so if I can give an example, like with regards to our oil industry, so you'd have various pipelines either carrying fluid or gas, and those pipelines you need to monitor them to see if they're meeting the required pressure with regards to the fluid that is actually passing through those pipes. So the pressure gauge, they're actually installed on those pipes, and you can then monitor the pressure that's actually passing through, flowing through the pipes to determine if all is well, or with regards to your whole system being within the requirements of the pressure.
So this is very important to ensure that pipe doesn't burst in any instance.
So you're right. So it plays a big part with regards to safety.
Okay. Can you say how we calibrate the pressure gauges, and what is the PSI maximum and minimum that we use?
Right. So at the Bureau we have very accurate instruments. We would call them reference standards. So client may submit a pressure gauge, and then that is compared against our reference standards. In this case, we would call it a pressure comparator. And also we have our accurate standard to be a pressure gauge that is way more accurate than the device that is submitted. So that's the basics in calibration. Once you're calibrating, you have your standard, which is more accurate than the device that's being tested, and that calibration is carried out on a pressure comparator.
Okay, and some persons will ask, who calibrates the GNBS standard?
Right, so our standard now is sent to another metrology institute, and where we maintains our traceability to the international standards SI units.
So if you have a company or work for a business that uses pressure gauges within the PSIs that Edward would have mentioned, you can be sure to contact the GNBS and have us calibrate those devices to ensure that they're accurate. Now we will take a look at a demonstration of how this process is done.
Pressure gauges are done within a range of 0 to 40,000 psi using our pressure comparator. We also do vacuum ranging from 0 to -12 psi. pressure calibration is done using a reference standard and the device under test. So we use the pressure comparator and we apply a certain amount of pressure and we compare it with the reference. So the reference and the device on the test should be reading the same or close to the same.
Thank you for that short demonstration, and now we will look at torque wrenches. Torque wrenches are used in several industries, and I will switch to Edward to tell me more about that because I'm not a technical person, so I hardly understand torque wrenches and the use of torque wrenches, but we have our qualified professional here that can tell us more about that and how it's calibrated.
Right, so torque wrench, it's a device you would use, for example, if I give a basic example, to maybe tighten a bolt or a nut. Right, so you'd find the uses again in the aeronautics and the oil industry, even in a car maintenance shop. So for example, again, it comes back to safety again, is an important part. If you're going to change a wheel, I mean the nuts there, the lug nuts, you know it as, those would have to be actually tightened to a specific torque. Right? Over tightening or under tightening, again, it can, if you over tighten, you can put stress or can cause the nut to crack. Under tightening, the wheel can come loose and again, and that's safety again. So it's basically the GNBS would calibrate those tools using a torque calibrator, and then we can determine whether your device is giving accurate measurements with regards to the torque force.
Okay, thank you, and we'll get right into showing our viewers how this is done. How is it that we calibrate torque wrenches?
Okay, so this is a torque wrench. We do torque wrenches from ranges from 0 to 1000 Newton meters using the torque wrench calibrator. Okay, so the torque wrench calibrator, we install the torque wrench and we set it to a desired torque setting and we apply the pressure. And whenever you get to the applied torque, you will hear a beep and a clicking sound from the torque wrench, and the indicator indicates the amount of torque applied from the torque calibrator.
If you're working in a business or you know anyone who uses torque wrenches, and I think it's a common instrument that is used, you can get them calibrated at the GNBS at an affordable cost, of course. Thank you for that short demonstration, and now we will talk about electrical calibration, the calibration of digital multimeters, and this is used, as it say, in dealing with electricity. So Edward, can you tell us about the digital multimeters, how we calibrate them, what we calibrate them for?
Right, so with regards to the calibration of the multimeter, at the Bureau we have a reference multimeter, and we would use that to calibrate the digital multimeter submitted by clients and of course with regards to the various industries. The multimeters, basically they're used to troubleshoot, basically for electrical or resistance or voltage. So those parameters we will normally test using our multimeters to determine the accuracy of the multimeter submitted for calibration.
Okay, and what is it that you calibrate them for? What do you look for?
Again, we would calibrate them against the parameters of the voltage range, the ohm range, and the current range. So each multimeter would have a voltage range, ohm range, and a current range. Different multimeters would have different specifications, but our equipment here can accommodate those variations with regards to the specification of those instruments.
Okay, thank you. That's a lot that the Industrial Metrology and Testing Department does, and there is no better way to show how the digital multimeters are calibrated than to take a look at how it's done.
So this is a handheld 4-digit digital multimeter. Its purpose is to read electrical quantities such as voltage, current, and resistance. So this is our Fluke 500A multi-purpose calibrator. Its purpose is to simulate electrical quantities, resistance, voltage, current, and so on. So what we would normally do is just to input whatever value we need or whatever quantity we need. It is then simulated onto the multimeter. If by chance it is off, we would make an adjustment on the calibrator, and then we would record how off it is. In addition to handheld digital multimeters, the IMT department, GNBS, can also calibrate amp meters. Those are the clamp-on digital meters, and our ranges are up to from 0 to 500 amps.
Thank you, IMT team. In February, the GNBS also participated in the Energy Conference and Expo 2022. Over the 4 days, the GNBS team met with several stakeholders and business persons in the oil and gas sector. Let's take a look at the highlights. We are at the Energy Conference and Expo 2022, and we're at the Ghana National Bureau of Standards booth. With me is Ms. Aisha Hussein, who is a marketing officer at the GNBS. How has it been going?
Hi, Bibi. It has been wonderful. The response has been great so far.
Great. And what are some of the services that GNBS is promoting?
We're promoting our calibration and testing services. A point to note, our laboratory is ISO 17025 accredited. We're also promoting our technical assistance and training services and our certification and auditing services.
Have you been enjoying the initiative here?
Yes, it has been very, very interactive. Yep, I'm very busy.
That's really good. Busy is good.
It's very good, yep.
All right, thank you very much. And what would you like to say to potential clients, stakeholders, anybody who has visited or is looking to interact with the GNBS?
Well, we're the national standards body, which means we're promoting quality and standards. And it also means that our services is a reflection of quality and standards.
That was indeed an exciting experience. And as we continue to promote the products and services offered by the GNBS, remember applications are still open for the Made in Guyana mark. We are encouraging persons to get their products certified by the GNBS. In addition, we have several trainings planned for the first quarter of 2022. If you're interested in increasing your knowledge in quality management systems, internal auditing, or presenting safe foods, be sure to contact the GNBS. Here is a list of our programs we have to offer for this year. And that brings us to the end of this edition of the GNBS in 30. Just a reminder, our contact numbers are 219-0064-66, or you can WhatsApp us on 692-4627. Thank you.